You are listening to The Hero's Journey. I'm Dan Zarzana.
And I'm Jeff Garvin.
Let the journey begin.
If you are new here, welcome. We've saved a seat for you in the front or the back, wherever you feel most comfortable. Our primary goal here is to appreciate stories. We consider ourselves students of Joseph Campbell and Christopher Vogler, our mentors in spirit. And we apply their scholarship to modern books and films to build a greater understanding of the stories we tell today.
Thank you to all the listeners who've been with us from episode 1. And if this is your first experience with us, this is your spoiler warning.
Yes.
We discuss the story from start to finish. So if you prefer to avoid spoilers and you haven't seen this episode's subject, this is your chance to press the back button and check out one of our other episodes.
Directed by Jeremiah Chechik, Christmas Vacation is the third of 5 films featuring the misadventures of the Griswold family. The film stars, as they all do, Chevy Chase and Beverly D'Angelo as Clark and Ellen. Their children, Audrey and Rusty, are never played by the same 2 actors in any of the films. And it also appears that their age relative to each other changes.
Yeah.
But here, we have Juliette Lewis and Johnny Galecki.
Produced with a $27 million budget, the film was released December 1st, 1989, and decked the theater halls for 8 weeks, earning a worldwide total of $72.9 million. As far as awards go, let's see. We've got Golden Globe, no. Academy Award, no. Bupkis. But that means no Razzies either, so that's good.
I was also reading that it was considered a very high budget because Ghostbusters had all sorts of visual effects and its budget was only $30 million.
How did Christmas Vacation... And they came out the same... No, Ghostbusters was 84.
Yeah, but
so 5 years difference, but still.
I'm guessing actor salaries because...
I'm guessing Chevy Chase.
Yeah, of the success of the previous Vacation movies.
Yeah.
We would be remiss if we failed to mention that the film was written by one of the kings of 80s and 90s cinema, one of my influences, the late John Hughes.
Yeah, I either didn't know or it had slipped my mind that John Hughes wrote the first 3 Vacation films.
He apparently has written so much stuff that we've seen and didn't know was John Hughes. He just, it didn't feel like it had the John Hughes stamp. There were so many other big names associated with these films.
So the Griswolds have traveled cross-country to visit Wally World. They've traveled across the Atlantic to visit Europe. This time they're having a cozy staycation, and we're all invited. So hang the lights on the house, trim the tree, and whip up some eggnog. This is National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
Every journey begins with the ordinary world, the world of common day, where we see our character in their status quo normal life. This movie is less plot, more slapstick, little family moments and vignettes, details we can all relate to.
Right.
But there are still elements of the journey. I think the opening animated sequence gives us a sense of the world of this movie. We are in for a We're in for a goofy slapstick comedy. We are not about to see a deep family reconciliation movie.
Yeah.
In case you saw missed the first 2 Vacation movies and thought you were in for like a heartwarming Christmas tale. Chevy Chase falling off ladders for 90 minutes. Clark Griswold is, as one of his coworkers, Bill, suggests, the last true family man. He works at some kind of food chemical additive manufacturing company. He's working on a non-nutritive cereal varnish, which presumably is to get the cornflakes to keep from turning soggy in milk. And I, for one, eagerly await its arrival on grocery store shelves. My daughter will eat half a bowl of cereal and then say, I'll save it for later. And I'm like, you're going to drink. Oh, it's just so wrong. So we meet him in his wood-paneled Ford station wagon with the whole family. He's singing at the top of his lungs in this bizarre baritone that sounds like it was overdubbed, to the delight of his wife, Ellen, and the irritation of his children, Audrey, played by Juliette Lewis, and Russ, Johnny Galecki. And here's a little actor moment that we'll probably cut because they irritate you so.
Oh no, I love Jeff Garvin.
Really?
Actor moments. It's a feature of this show, Jeffrey.
One of my first jobs as an actor was on Roseanne, and Johnny Galecki was one of the stars of that show.
Did you meet him?
You know, I don't know if we shook hands and said hi, but we were on set at the same time. You know. I did, though, when Tim Curry was on that show, I did go up to Tim Curry and introduce myself.
All right. Is there any more World of Common Day?
Yeah.
Or should we
so
move on? All right.
They're on their way to pick out the all-important symbol of Christmas, the Griswold family Christmas tree, and Clark is cheerful and a little bit hapless, but we get the sense he's totally well-meaning. But there is a kind of rage bubbling under...
I feel like Homer Simpson and Clark Griswold have a lot in common.
Yeah, yes. Clark maybe is a little sharper, a little smarter than Homer.
Yeah, sure.
So there's this rage, though, that we see just bubbling under the surface as demonstrated by his aggressive driving. So these two crusty dudes in a torn-up Dodge truck are riding his tail, and then they pass him and slam on the brakes after he distracts his family so he can give him the bird. But it gets into a quickly escalating passing contest, and his wife is starting to get nervous, and he says to her, "I'm in complete control." But the next moment, he changes lanes to pass them and literally drives under a timber hauling 18-wheeler. And she prays, "Forgive my husband, he knows not what he does." And that is Clark in a nutshell.
Well done, yeah.
That's what I see as introducing Clark in his ordinary world.
Yeah, I said he's a well-meaning and optimistic father, but kind of a passive-aggressive jerk.
Yeah, yes.
Alrighty, next segment of the hero's journey is the call to adventure, where the hero is presented with a challenge which renders him unable to continue living in the comfort of the ordinary world. The call to adventure in this film is self-imposed. Clark has announced that he wants to host a big old-fashioned family Christmas.
I want to have Christmas here in our house. It means a lot to me. All my life I've wanted to have a big family Christmas.
There's a second element to this, which is the swimming pool that Clark is planning to put in the backyard using his Christmas bonus that he is expecting to receive from work.
Right.
That is the call to adventure.
It's an interesting couple of the way it gets introduced. I mean, the arrival of the oncoming Christmas season in itself is kind of the call to adventure. But the moment I tagged is when they're in bed that night after that crazy magazine ripping scene. It's so great. Where he's turning pages in the magazine and he gets that adhesive from the subscription card stuck on his thumb, and then he's trying to turn pages.
I thought it was tree sap. He just finished unfurling the Christmas tree.
Right. Duh. And it's funny because, you know, those kinds of scenes are clearly Chevy Chase doing his thing. And at one point, he's starting to pass the pages over to Ellen, and then she gets her fingers stuck, and she's like, "Oh, fine, I'm done." And then so she brings up that her parents are coming to Christmas. I think that is the beginning of the conversation about the big family Christmas. And then for the paycheck, Bill is at work, and he asks him,
"The big question is, what are you going to do with that big bonus check? You're going to blow it on yourself, I hope."
Me? Heck no. Take a look at this. Just hope my Christmas bonus check will cover it.
Oh my God, you're putting in a pool.
So those two scenes reflect the beginning of refusal of the call, where the hero is confronted with fear of the unknown and refuses to engage in the call. And lots of times, especially in these kinds of stories like Clark's, where he's ready. He's not a reluctant hero. That energy of refusal comes from without. So Ellen gives us some refusal from without. She's the one telling Clark all the horrible conflicts that are going to happen with all the parents when they come over. And she says it's not too late for them to back out. But of course, Clark is like, no, Christmas is about resolving differences and seeing through the petty problems of family. And that's exactly what this movie becomes, right? At work, there is a tiny bit of refusal.
Okay.
From within, and it's just expressed as that moment of self-doubt we've been talking about for the past couple of episodes, like Harry saying, "I can't be a wizard, I'm just Harry." He says, I just hope my Christmas bonus check will cover it.
Right.
So he's just that little sense of, I doubt myself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this isn't related to the refusal, but I kept trying to figure out where this one scene fit into the movie. But I think it's another peak of the rage that's hovering just beneath the surface in Clark. So he has this interaction with his boss where his boss wants a report on the non-nutritive cereal Varnish. Such a great name. And he says he'll get it. And then the yes men are filing past Clark, following his boss, Mr. Shirley. And Clark says, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
For the first
Merry
guy.
Christmas.
And then
Merry
he says,
Christmas. Merry Christmas. Kiss my ass. Kiss his ass. Kiss your ass. Happy Hanukkah.
And there's a saying that pain is comedy, and Clark's is clearly the frustration of not being recognized by his boss or even by his family as this guy who can lead Christmas. He's pissed off about it.
Wow. You really saw a lot of symbolism here.
Yeah, well, his anger is what drives this movie. It causes all the problems and all the solutions. And so,
yeah.
And it's, Chevy Chase as a comedic actor, his whole shtick is falling down and getting back up again. His pratfalls are, from Saturday Night Live, are legend. He falls down the stairs, he falls and crashes into tables, and falling and getting back up again is exactly what this movie is about.
Yeah.
So I don't know. He's perfectly cast in this.
That's, wow. You said you have never seen this movie before, right? This is your first viewing. And I've seen this movie every year. This is on rotation in my repertoire of holiday films to watch during December. And so I've seen this movie every year for decades. And in some way, I think that means I've stopped seeing it. Even though I sat and watched it to do this analysis, I think I just kind of subconsciously was picking up on surface level elements and really didn't get that benefit of watching the film for the very first time and having to pay attention to every little moment to see if there was meaning in it.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So I'm actually looking forward to hearing your thoughts on the rest of this because that was great. The next segment is meeting with the mentor, where the hero receives counsel on how to operate in the special world. You mentioned this line already in the World of Common Day, but I felt that his office colleague Bill telling Clark
You're the last true family
was
man.
an affirmation to Clark that he is representative of a cultural ideal and that what he is attempting to do is the right thing.
I like it.
I didn't see a whole lot of mentorship until way late in the movie.
So I saw one other moment of mentorship, and it came out of order, and I couldn't place it until I started to watch the movie a second time. When Clark goes to hide his Christmas gifts, he finds a Mother's Day gift from 1983, and who writes the year on their card? But of course, that's a nod to the first Vacation film, which came out in 1983. He finds the gift where he's hiding. He's trying to hide his Christmas presents in the same place. And I saw that as him unknowingly repeating old patterns. And that was an opportunity. That was an opportunity for him to realize, I'm going to do this again. I'm going to overblow expectations and have everything get wrecked. And of course, he ignores it. So I guess you could also put that as a test. But then he finds this old film reel of his idyllic childhood Christmas in 1955. And I think he takes that as mentorship. Like, I can create, now this is the kind of Christmas I want to create. I'm going to create this perfect Christmas. I think it ends up being false mentorship, which you mentioned his dad kind of bursts the bubble by revealing what Christmas was really like. It was always a nightmare.
Yeah.
So I saw that as the closest thing to sitting down and receiving guidance from a mentor. And he rejects the good advice and accepts the bad advice. So that leads us to crossing the threshold. The hero must pass a barrier to enter the special world, and this crossing represents the hero's commitment to taking on the adventure. So I see two threshold crossings, one figurative and one quite literal. So the next scene is the beginning of Christmas shopping, which is kind of the traditional modern suburban launch. And there's this hilarious scene where he's at the lingerie counter with this beautiful model woman who's trying to help him, and it's just an avalanche of Freudian slips that get more and more ridiculous. And Chevy Chase, we still say it's getting nipply outside because of this scene, right? That's like become a meme. But it's that whole scene. This movie made me laugh out loud so many times and so surprisingly. And that scene was probably the real beginning of me just cackling at this movie.
That is such a surprise to me. I kind of expected you to not like this movie, that it was just going to be too stupid.
There were a lot of parts that I thought were stupid, but Chevy Chase, his genius shines through in many scenes in this movie, and this is one of them.
Okay.
Chevy Chase has this ability to surprise himself with scripted things. And then the real crossing of the threshold is the doorbell rings.
Oh, yes.
All the members of the Griswold family are in different places in the house, but they all kind of register the doorbell ring, and then the door opens slowly, and both sets of arguing parents literally cross the threshold into Clark's house, and presents are brought in, and children are kissed, and complaints are issued, and arguments are continued. But this is, by welcoming the family into the house, this is Clark embarking on his Christmas quest.
And I believe that concludes Act 1, yes?
Yeah, that's it.
I believe it is time to head to Side Quest at the virtual Campbell Cafe.
Let's go. Dan, it's a beautiful day at the virtual Campbell Cafe.
It's as beautiful as you want to make it.
We're sitting back here having coffee. I'm interested in what you watched, read, and played.
Man, I had a busy inter-episode period. I watched and read a lot.
Nice.
Mostly read a lot. I read 6 books.
Wow. Did a spit take there.
Bannerless by Carrie Vaughn, People of the Book by Geraldine Brooks, How to Find Love in a Bookshop by Veronica Henry, Circe by Madeline Miller, The Grey Bastards by Jonathan French, and Abaddon's Gate by James S.A. Corey.
Wow.
Which of those would you like to hear about?
I would like to hear about Abaddon's Gate and Circe.
Circe was the second book of the Joseph Campbell Book Club that is hosted by Literati.
Yeah.
I talked last episode, I think, about the Wayfinders. That was the first one. Circe's the second one. So Circe is a fictional book, a fantasy, written about the life of the goddess, lesser goddess, Circe, who was banished by her people to an island for a crime committed against one of her own. This is a story where Madeline Miller has taken the character Circe from the Odyssey and written an entire story about this character. At some point on the way home from the Trojan War, Odysseus and his ship land on the island where Circe has been banished, and they stay there for a year before heading on home. So that's just, one part of this story, but it was a really neat, speculative, I guess, fantasy about what this goddess's life might have been like.
I am so disappointed.
Why?
Because I thought you were about to talk about the long-awaited next installment of the Game of Thrones series by George R.R. Martin. This doesn't sound like it's about Circe at all.
This is about the original Circe.
Well, origin stories are good. Anyway, what else did you read? Oh, Abaddon. Tell me about Abaddon's Gate.
That is book 3 of the Expanse series, a science fiction series written by James S.A. Corey, which is a nom de plume of the authors Daniel Abraham and Ty Frank. If we want to loop this, close the loop here on Game of Thrones, Ty Frank is George R.R. Martin's assistant and keeper of his notes. So if George R.R. Martin is ever not able to finish the Game of Thrones, or A Song of Ice and Fire, then Ty Frank,
He'll be the Brandon Sanderson Wheel of Time analog for George R.R. Martin.
Possibly. Who knows? Could be. But the Expanse novel series is so good. It's so good. The books are nice, big, chunky, like 500 to 600 page sci-fi stories, but I blast through them so quickly. Similarly, in the way Game of Thrones, and lots of stories really, but I keep calling it Game of Thrones. A Song of Ice and Fire is the name of the book series. The chapters are broken up and alternate between characters. But each chapter is about 10 pages long, and it keeps the pace rapid fire. So you're, boom, one character to the next, and like they get into a situation, and you're like, wait, how does that resolve? So you read the next chapter of the next character, so you find out what happens to Anna, but then Captain Holden gets into some trouble at the end of his chapter, and then you've got Anna again, and you're like, wait, what happened to Captain Holden? So you just churn through these books. I've read all 3 of these books in like a week. Each book took me a week, which is very fast for me. I'm a pretty slow. I kind of take my time with a book, but man, the Expanse is great. What this now has enabled me to do is continue watching the TV series that is now produced by Amazon Prime, because book 3 joins the TV series in the middle of season 3. So I had stopped watching so that I could read book 3. Now that I'm there, I can continue the series. So, and then I watched some movies and played some video games, but I've already taken up too much time. So, what have you been up to?
I only read one book, and it is an advanced reader copy of my friend Robin Rule's forthcoming novel, Where the Road Leads Us. It was wonderful. It's a coming-of-age story with 2 points of view. It's a road trip book. It's got a crazy caper in the middle of it. So it really appealed to me, and I think it'll appeal to fans of The Lightness of Hands, because it's got that caper element. And I don't know, I love that stuff. So Where the Road Leads Us is coming, I believe, in April 2021 from Robin Rule, Reul. So put that on your Goodreads list. Okay, so I watched 12 movies since I saw you last, which may be a record.
How did you find the time? You always complain about not having time to watch movies. Now you've watched all of them.
I did. Well, 2 things. So the Saturday Night Movie Film Festival with Mac and Mel has continued. We've taken on the Marvel Comic Universe.
Okay.
We're going to watch all the movies in order. So I watched Iron Man 2, and Thor. The highlight there, I think, is I hated Thor the first time I watched it, and it turned me off. I didn't watch another Marvel movie after that, and so we rewatched it, and I really liked it. It wasn't brilliant, but I love fish out of water stuff, and Thor breaking coffee mugs and demanding things on Earth was hilarious. Tom Hiddleston's, like 80% of his performance is brilliant, and then the other 20% kind of makes me go, oh. So I'll see how my love or hate for him continues.
Well, he's good. He's good enough that he's getting his own TV show. So somebody thinks he's aight.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think he's aight. I also watched Muppet Christmas Carol, but for me, the 2 highlights were I found 2 5-star movies. I rewatched Casino Royale, which is the first Daniel Craig Bond movie, and it was directed by the same guy who directed GoldenEye, which was Pierce Brosnan's first movie. So this director got to introduce 2 new Bonds back to back.
Wow.
And I thought that was a really, and so Casino Royale is it's a perfect action movie. They upgraded Bond. I think they asked themselves, how can we blow Jason Bourne out of the water and still be James Bond? And they did it. So that's a 5-star movie for me.
Wow.
And then I rewatched Interstellar, which I remembered confused me a lot the first time I watched it, but it was so emotional. That became a 5-star movie for me on second watch.
Excellent.
I absolutely love that movie.
Yeah, I get very snotty when McConaughey is driving away from his house in his truck after he's had that tearful goodbye with, like, Murph, don't make me leave like this. Don't make me leave like this, Murph. And she's so angry at him, and she doesn't want to talk to him. And he leaves, and then she comes to her senses and tries to chase him, and he doesn't see her, and he's just driving down the road, that dirt road, sobbing. And every time, I don't have kids, I have no a connection to any children, but man, I can feel that. I feel that loss, and holy smoke, it's just like every time.
Ugly cry. The device of watching video messages from your children 10 years after they happen was crushing.
Yeah.
And Matthew McConaughey ugly cries, and he's so believable. And then the other thing that I loved was the way they played with time dilation when they get close to the black hole, and it's like every day, every hour is a year. Every hour on the planet is a year on the ship. I mean, it's just such original sci-fi stuff that I hadn't really seen that way before. I loved it.
That's awesome, man. We both earned a lot of XP this month.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's right.
We leveled up. We have to have. All right. Act 2.
Act 2.
The Road of Trials, or tests allies and enemies. Now that our hero has crossed the first threshold, they meet allies, make enemies, and must pass a series of tests to prove their worthiness. Allies, the family, even Cousin Eddie. Enemies, the snotty, yuppie neighbors, Todd and Margot. Although they don't really take any action against Clark, it's clear that they harbor him tremendous ill will.
Yeah, he's an enemy to them anyway.
You know what? That's probably true. Yes, you understand why Todd and Margot hate the Griswolds. Clark's boss, Mr. Shirley, is an enemy for most of the film. He is a shapeshifter.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say it's hard for me to categorize these folks as enemies because I don't think most of them do what they do intentionally. It's just they are as hapless as Clark. But Uncle Lewis does some stuff that causes Clark some problems. Eddie does. Ellen's mother. They all cause trouble for Clark, but none of it is out of malice.
I had everybody but the nuclear family as shapeshifters because the in-laws are jerks to him the whole time, but then they stand up for him at the end. There were also 3 other clear enemies that you've left out. I mean, just glaring omissions.
Okay.
And those are Snots the dog, the cat, and the vicious squirrel. Animals in general are clearly anti-Clark. Man versus nature, man. The trees are all against him. It's just... He's not an outdoorsman, Clark Griswold.
All right. Moving on to tests. I think that this film is heavily imbalanced in favor of Act 2 in terms of runtime.
Yep.
Most of the film is just a series, like you said, it's a series of vignettes featuring Chevy Chase falling off of things.
I think slapstick comedies often have a delayed crisis because you want to extend things getting worse and worse and worse because that's funnier and funnier and funnier.
Right. Yeah. So I think obviously Clark's first test is trying to put up the house lights.
Yes.
It's just like 25,000. I forgot what number he says, but it's just there's thousands of them. And he's blanketed the house with them. And he plugs them in and they don't work.
Do you remember Christmas lights back then where if one bulb didn't work, the rest of the strand was out? What a stupid design that was. But what a nightmare it was when you put up the lights and turned them on. Well, I got to find the light.
But he goes through all kinds of physical comedy. The ladder collapses on him and he staples himself to the eave and all kinds of just crazy stuff. There's also as he falls off the roof and he grabs onto the rain gutter and it breaks and just a spear of ice shoots across the house, smashes into Todd and Margot's house and destroys their stereo system. And I caught a feature? I don't know, but it's the sound of their stereo exploding sounded like a lightsaber strike.
Wow.
To me, I'll do a back-to-back. We'll A-B it here. I love it. And we'll see if I'm right. But so here's the stereo. And now here's a lightsaber strike. So to me, they sound similar. I don't know if one was used in homage of the other, but anyway.
I did notice that 1989 would have been very early to adopt the compact disc format. And so that makes Todd even more of an a-hole.
Why? Because he's got CDs?
Because he's like, I don't know. They don't belong in that neighborhood. It makes me very angry. Get out. If you're going to be like that, if you're going to wear sunglasses at night in the winter, get out of my neighborhood. Also,
oh my gosh.
Also, I love that it's like a mystery because the ice has clearly melted and they don't understand what destroyed the syrup.
And why is the carpet all wet, Todd?
I don't know, Margot.
The trauma that Todd and Margot experience, I laugh at them still today. Like even so many of the jokes, because I watched this movie so many times, so many of the jokes I just kind of go, huh, because they've kind of like died on me now. But watching Todd and Margot go through their trauma is still funny to me. And I don't know what that says about me as a person. Next test, you said this was a mentor moment, and I can absolutely agree with that, but hiding the gifts in the attic. The test, I thought, was as he's hiding the gifts in the attic, his mother-in-law closes the ladder and shuts him in, and he can't get out.
Right.
And then the whole family piles in the car and goes to the mall to go shopping and leave him in the attic. And he's just in his pajamas. It's winter. There's no heat in the attic. It is cold up there. So now he's got to try to figure out, how am I going to survive in the mountains until I'm rescued? So
again, man versus nature.
Right.
You're right.
That's right. But the watching of the old film strips of his family Christmases from when he was a child, I think that even though he's had so much trouble so far making family Christmas happen, this emboldens him to continue trying. Another test is revisiting the decorations, trying to get the house lights working. This is a test that continues on for 20 minutes of the film, is him trying to get this done. But this time, Ellen realizes what the problem is. And the lights come on, and they're spectacular, and it's a spotlight into Todd and Margot's house as they're trying to have this romantic moment.
Just like
and they're falling over
the alien
each other.
Spacecraft lands. Yeah,
they're blinded and they're crashing into things. And poor Julia Louis-Dreyfus is left just sobbing on the ground. And I love it. So funny. But ultimately, the end result is the house lights end up working. They figured out the problem, and they've got the best house on the block. There's a lot of runtime is occupied with that stuff. Cousin Eddie and his family arrive as everyone's looking at the beauty of the house lights. And he was not invited, obviously. But he's got this just wrecked RV that he's parked in the driveway.
It's so rusty, and it's just an eyesore.
And they've got, the dog.
Snots.
Yeah, and so now they have to kind of re-bunk everybody and figure out how they're going to fit these two other kids and the dog in the house. And
this is a test of his commitment to this big family Christmas. This is like, hey, you've survived so far, and you've been barely hanging on. Now you got this whole other family, and they're just horrible. Yeah. Are you going to deal with it? And he's,
Do you have you probably got some more tests.
Yeah, just two more. So Clark drops off a Christmas present for his boss, Mr. Shirley. And
that's right.
He's so the guy's desk is like 100 yards long. It's like
Bruce Wayne's dining room table.
I wrote that down. It's like Batman's dining table. Like, God, I wrote that exact thing down. So this is a work test. He's trying to figure out, has he really made an impression on his boss with the cereal varnish? Can he get a feel for how big his bonus check's gonna be? And he definitely fails it. The guy doesn't know who Clark is. Gives him a new horrible name every time. They get more. At one point, he said, instead of Griswold, he says Greaseball. It just gets worse and worse. And couldn't care less about him. Clark tries to ingratiate himself, reminding him about the presentation that he contributed to, but Shirley just dismisses him.
By the way, I hope my report helped out at the trade show.
I'm sure it did, Griswold. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm in the middle of an important call. Get me somebody. Anybody.
And then the last one was when he goes sledding with his family on those steel saucer sleds, and he puts the special non-caloric silicone-based kitchen lubricant that his company's been working on the bottom of his sled. Snow play is part of a family Christmas in the Midwest, and this stuff that he puts on it makes the sled so slippery that he shoots down the hill and through the woods and into the neighborhood over this horrible 80s music.
Yeah.
And like obvious like projection screen sequence. But the funniest part is the story from Eddie about the plate in his head and how he had a metal plate in his head, but every time his wife used the microwave, he would pee in his pants. I just died. Well, I was laughing so hard. And then they replaced it with a plastic one, and his concern is that if he hits it wrong, his hair will never...
Well, see, the plate runs right underneath my part here. If this gets dented, then my hair just ain't gonna look
And
right.
his delivery... And Chevy Chase's, like, this is the brilliance of his underplaying everything, is you just see in his eyes, like, oh my God, this guy is an idiot. But he just nods like, okay. So yeah, I saw that as the end of tests.
Okay.
Every time she turns the microwave on, I piss my pants. I wish they'd shown that, like, as a flashback. It's so funny. Anyway, that brings us to approach to the inmost cave. The hero reaches the edge of a dangerous place where the object of their quest is hidden. The object of Clark's quest is the perfect family Christmas. And throughout the movie, there are these transition shots of a hand reaching in and opening the door of an advent calendar and showing the date. It's like a countdown until Christmas. And it's a really nice device to show the passage of time. And sometimes, like in this case, it helps to differentiate or to mark the border between stages of the journey. So at work, Bill pops into Clark's office to say Merry Christmas. And Clark is nervously fidgeting with his model swimming pool. Mm-hmm. He's anxious because if he doesn't get the bonus, he's sunk. And he becomes even more anxious when Bill says he's already gotten his check, came by messenger earlier that day. So this is just ratcheting up the tension about this check. So that night, Clark can't sleep. He's staring out the window, and he has this elaborate fantasy sequence of what it'll be like when he gets his pool. And popping the balloon of this fantasy, his niece, a wild-haired, cute little urchin named Ruby Sue, comes down the stairs and expresses her doubts that Santa Claus is coming or that she'll get presents at all. And Clark basically guarantees her that he will. This is him taking a stand again for the perfect family Christmas. Now, in fact, when Ruby Sue comes downstairs, she mistakes Clark for Santa Claus. He's wearing a bright red bathrobe and mostly white pajamas that form a cuff. And Clark aspires to be Santa Claus. In an obtuse way, this is symbolic of the role Clark wants to play. In his chapter about the approach, Vogler writes of heroes trading masks, being promoted from trickster, clown, or ally to full-fledged heroes. And I think that's what we're seeing in this scene.
Oh, poor little Ruby Sue. Last year, we didn't do nothing wrong, and we still got the shaft.
Yeah, they make fun of Eddie's white trash family, but it is tense and sad when one side of the family is relatively well off and the other is suffering. Just a couple other things. Outside the next morning, Eddie is emptying his RV toilet tank into the sewer.
Yeah. To Rudolph the Reindeer played on, I think, a tuba?
Yeah. Hey, that's a really good tuba noise. That's really good. I have emptied an RV toilet tank in 12 states across this country, and even when it only contains liquid, it is a foul experience. So but in this moment, he releases some kind of sewer gas, which Clark warns is highly flammable. So this is the danger rising, right?
Yeah.
And then the final part of the approach is some last-minute Christmas shopping with Eddie. This is the last chance to get all this stuff, to make Christmas perfect. And
Yes.
Eddie is just piling the cart with dog food. Every time they pass a display that has dog food on it, he throws another bag into the cart. At this point, he reveals to Clark that he's broke, that he sent all his money to a TV preacher. He sold his barn and his house and his 10 acres. Clark says that he and Ellen want to buy Christmas gifts for the kids, and Eddie pushes back for only a moment before handing him a detailed list as if he were prepared. So I think that's really the end of the approach here.
Which brings us to the ordeal, where the hero faces the ultimate test, often risking death to overcome his worst fear, sometimes actually appearing to die. Now, in a film like this, there's no real risk of death. This is not an action adventure kind of a thing, but death of the dream or a death of the innocence of the hero. That's the kind of thing that we're looking at in a movie like this. The ordeal, I think, is pretty much the entirety, well, almost, of Christmas Eve.
Yes, agreed.
This is when the family is all supposed to come together and have their big Christmas Eve dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And the table is set very beautifully. Everyone is set and waited, and the turkey looks great. And Clark carves into it, and it just bursts open in this steaming, nasty dryness. The meat is gray.
Oh, it's so disgusting. And the steam's coming out. What great, practical effects.
Yeah.
That is a foul.
And so the dinner is ruined.
Everyone is picking and chewing and just trying to get stuff out of it. It's horrible.
It looks so unpleasant. There's cat food in Aunt Bethany's Jell-O mold.
Oh, the Foley, the Foley while they're chewing is like the sounds of snapping celery and slurping and I can't stand the sound of people eating. I have this misophonic reaction to it. This scene made me want to vomit. The sound, just the Foley. Oh.
A little later, Uncle Lewis burns down the Christmas tree while he's lighting a stogie.
Wait, you passed the cat vaporizing itself on the lights.
And it just destroys that chair too, but Eddie wants to fumigate it. So I feel like I'm maybe skipping some stuff just because I wanted to get to the heart of the matter here, and that is that the bonus check arrives. And there's this quiet, hushed moment as everyone crowds around Clark as he opens it. And he tells everybody, I was going to save this surprise until tomorrow, but what the heck, with this bonus check, I'm putting in a swimming pool. And everyone's excited.
Yeah.
And he even says if there's leftover money, he's going to fly everybody back to help them dedicate it. And it's just, he's just like Ellen warned at the beginning, you build things up in your head and you set these standards that are unachievable. And that's what he's doing right here in this moment. He's building up the standard for the entire family now.
He is in full-blown Christmas mania at this point.
And he opens that envelope and it is not a bonus check.
It's a 1-year membership in the Jelly of the Month Club.
Oh, God.
Clark, that's the gift that keeps on giving the whole year.
That it is, Edward.
What a letdown. And this is where the hero dies.
Yep.
Emotionally and spiritually, he is deflated. But now financially, he is also in the hole because he revealed earlier that he already wrote a deposit check for the pool and he didn't have enough money to cover it. So he was waiting for the bonus check to save him financially. Now he's got nothing. Death of the hero.
Absolutely.
There's a little bit more. There's the getting of the new Christmas tree. But I feel like that's all Act 3.
Oh, I don't. And this was where I thought that Act 2 really ran long, is I think the ordeal continues. And it's it's not just the check, but you're right. He loses his mind in this giant torrent, right? He is the ultimate failure. Not only is he not Santa Claus, he is a disaster. He's the Grinch. He actually says, I want my boss here when I want for Christmas. I want my boss brought to me in a ribbon.
Yeah.
So he can tell him exactly what he thinks of him. So then you're right. The tree, the new tree, the squirrel, Eddie's dog goes chasing after the squirrel. I mean, just the house is destroyed. All the furniture, everything is just completely wrecked. And then Margot decides she's going to have a word with the Griswolds. And Clark opens the door just as she's knocking on it. And the dog just tackles her. And then to me, this is the ultimate part of the crisis, is that the family wants to leave.
Nobody's leaving. Nobody's walking out on this fun, old-fashioned family Christmas. No, we're all in this together. This is a full-blown 4-alarm holiday emergency here. We're gonna press on, and we're gonna have the happiest Christmas since Bing Crosby tap danced with Danny Kaye. And when Santa squeezes his fat white ass down that chimney tonight, he's gonna find the jolliest bunch of holes this side of the nut house.
That leads us to reward. The ultimate boon. Having faced his worst fear, the hero seizes the object of his quest. Clark is at his lowest point here. He did not achieve the object of his quest.
Yeah.
Only really, in a way, he did. So Clark and his dad have this really nice moment. His dad, who's just a sweet, sweet man, gives him some mentorship and reminds him who he is and how he should behave. And, Clark expresses his disappointment. Why are their holidays always such a mess? And he asks his dad, how'd you get through it? And his dad says,
I had a lot of help from Jack Daniels.
And this is sort of Clark's realization that it wasn't always perfect and that that's not the point, and that even his dad couldn't make it perfect, and that those films he was watching were just scrapbook moments of the highlights. But this is the real reward to me, is that Clark asks Dad if he's going to read 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, which is their tradition. But Dad says,
No, it's your house. It's your Christmas. I'm retiring.
So this passing of the torch, this is his dad acknowledging Clark that he's earned his new position. He's been through the fire, and now he can be the leader of Christmas, right? And so this other element of reward is crossing the return threshold. He's earned the knowledge of how to make a family Christmas and that it doesn't have to be perfect. So now he's doing it properly. Now they get to have the perfect Christmas moment. They're seated around the fire. He's reading the poem. Everyone's smiling and content. This is the Christmas Clark wanted. This moment is like, this is what he envisioned.
Yes.
And that is the end of Act 2. Let's have a drink.
The beverage break.
Oh man, I really needed to sit down in the Vogler Lounge and unwind with a beverage.
So what's in your glass or goblet or tankard or...
Well, Christmas has traditional beverages that you only drink during Christmas. And in one scene, we see Eddie and Clark drinking from Wally World mugs.
Uh-huh.
But instead, I got a bottle of Jack Daniels.
You did it again.
Because that's what Clark's dad drank to get through the holidays. So that's what I'm going to drink to get through the holidays. This is a plastic fifth. It is.
Oh, what?
They know their audience. It is a plastic bottle so that when you get hammered and throw it at the car window, it doesn't break.
Wow.
So that's what I got. Jack Daniels Old No. 7 Tennessee Whiskey. Or, as the bartender from The Shining calls it, bourbon.
Bourbon.
Which it is not.
It's not bourbon.
What'd you get?
Cousin Eddie tells Clark,
It's a crying shame the older kids couldn't make it. Yeah, I got the daughter in the clinic getting cured off the wild turkey.
Oh, yes.
but I have...
I knew it. I knew it. In the glass.
Eggnog in a Wally World mug.
In the glass, ladies and gentlemen. I am sad that we're not together because I don't think I've ever consumed an entire glass of eggnog. I think I've had sips, but the next time I get to see you, regardless of what time of year it is, I would like you to prepare for me a glass of eggnog, Dan style.
Wow.
I'm going to go first. I'm going to smell. Clink.
Oh,
Clinky,
yeah.
Clinky.
I'm just going to drink mine because it's eggnog. There's no...
Well, it smells, the Jack Daniels, which was my beverage of choice during the early Flash Pants days. It smells like nothing, like maybe a little apple juice in there.
Well, you've got an entire tray of ice cubes in there too. So
that's how it's served at a bar. They just fill a glass with ice and dump. So that's how I decided to serve it to myself.
Tasha wouldn't do that to you.
It has the mellowness in flavor of an Irish whiskey. It's got a certain smoothness. On top of that, there's like a medicinal kind of a flavor and almost an herbal Jägermeistery kind of a... I don't know. I don't know what's in there. And then there's just the bite of grain alcohol.
Of ethanol, yeah.
Yeah. But it immediately puts me in a bar. It's like... This tastes like what a bar smells like, and there's something very sentimental about it now that I haven't been to a bar in months and months and months. Being inside a bar at night playing a rock and roll show, that's what this reminds me of. So I'm enjoying it very much.
You do like Jack Daniels, right? Though it sounded, you were talking about it at the beginning, like, a little sarcastically, maybe a little pejoratively.
Yeah, I think of it as an alcohol. I don't think of it as a sipping whiskey. I think of it as do a shot with a beer or drink it in Diet Coke. I've never really stopped to appreciate the flavor just of it. But it's got complexity that I didn't remember. I don't think I've ever just had a glass of Jack Daniels before. After Mila Kunis started doing the ads for Jim Beam, I literally switched to Jim Beam and Diet Coke at bars because I wanted to support her career.
Yeah. And
I'm not kidding. Jim Beam, it's working. That ad campaign made me switch. Sorry, Jack Daniels. God, I wonder how much they paid her.
So the eggnog, you can mix eggnog with a variety of liquors. Sometimes people put rum in it. Sometimes people put whiskey in it. I've got mine with brandy, which is how I think I've always had it. I don't know if that was just how it was introduced to me or what. But I'm amused that your Jack Daniels is in a plastic bottle, because my brandy was also in a plastic bottle. It was a huge Corbel bottle. I think it was like 1.5 liters.
I thought Corbel makes champagne. They make brandy too?
Yeah, they also make brandy. Don't pigeonhole them. They can expand. They can expand their operation.
I have a question. What is brandy? What is it made of?
A brandy is a liquor produced from distilled wine. Which makes sense, then, that Corbel is producing brandy because they also make wine. December 1st, that's eggnog season. I substitute most of the beverages that I typically drink with eggnog. That's probably the beverage I consume most of in the month of December. And then January 1st, I switch back to my daily regimen of 3 beers and 2 whiskeys.
I think I'm gonna adopt that this year. I think Ami enjoys eggnog. We have a liquor cabinet full of stuff we could use. I think I'm gonna try eggnog this year.
All right, Act 3 awaits us, Jeffrey.
Mm-hmm.
We need to make our way back to the studio.
I'm ready.
Act 3 of the hero's journey: The Road Back, where the hero is pursued by vengeful forces he disturbed when he seized the sword. Now, a lot of the stuff that you put in the ordeal, at the end of the ordeal, a lot of that was my road back. Because I had said that Cousin Eddie going to abduct Mr. Shirley, because Clark says, if anyone's thinking of any last-minute gift ideas, I've got one. I want my boss, Frank Shirley, brought from his happy home on Melody Lane, right here in my living room, so I can tell him what I think of him. And Cousin Eddie goes and does that for him. That's what I saw was the reward, because what that does then is allows Clark to confront Mr. Shirley, which then corrects the disaster of the ordeal.
I totally buy that. I really had trouble with road back.
Clark going nuts and cutting down a tree from the yard. He just loses his mind. He takes the chainsaw and cuts off the newel post in his home.
Which is another parallel with It's a Wonderful Life, because Jimmy Stewart is irritated by the newel post at the bottom of his staircase.
Yep. And I saw this is Clark attempting to fix the broken Christmas as he takes this tree from the yard, and there's a squirrel in it, and it wrecks the house. Well, it and the dog wrecks the house, and like all that I saw was rowed back. But then it doesn't fit what the reward is, because they're not vengeful forces assaulting the hero because the hero obtained the reward.
Yeah.
I had a hard time in this particular film relating the two.
So I had only one thing for the road back.
Oh, okay.
And that was Randy becomes the vengeful force, grabbing Mr. Shirley and bringing him back, which is a prize of sorts for Clark, but it also ups the disaster quotient, things that I have in the Resurrection. It has terrible consequences that barely turn around. So I had trouble with it too. I guess I got too involved in the order of things, the chronological order, because I was so clear what the reward was. And I wanted everything before that to fit into ordeal. But I do see, Uncle Lewis blowing up the tree and the squirrel and the dog and all that as consequences of Clark trying so hard to make it perfect that it was bound to go even worse. I can totally see that as a road back. I think that was very astute of you to put those things in there.
May I remind you that
This was all my idea, no?
No, I'm well aware of that.
Resurrection. The hero faces death one more time in a final battle or showdown. This time the danger is on the broadest scale of the whole story. Well, given what's at stake here, the perfect Christmas and the Griswold's swimming pool, which is essentially the capper Christmas gift of all, the danger here is great. Everything that's at stake in this movie is coming to a head. Mr. Shirley, having been kidnapped and dragged in chains with a giant bow around him, is very angry. And he fires Clark from his job, way worse than losing your bonus, being fired, and threatens to send Eddie to jail. And this is the moment where Clark finally confronts him.
I was expecting a check. Instead, I got enrolled in a jelly club. 17 years with the company. I've gotten a Christmas bonus every year but this one. If you don't want to give bonuses, fine. But when people count on them as part of their salary, I'll be more than happy to take the rap on this. On behalf of myself and on behalf of every other employee you rear-ended this Christmas.
And he takes responsibility for everything bad that's happened. And one by one, we cut to all his family members. All the parents get to their feet. And for the first time in the movie, everyone is on Clark's side. Every single person in that room is on Clark's side. And the boss, who's being confronted by the whole family now, recognizes the error of his ways, and he says, it's people that make the difference, little people like you, which you see Clark kind of register like, okay, I'm a little person, I get it. But that, that's
I'll take it.
In a lot of ways, that's the theme of the movie. It's the people that make the difference. And then he gives him a real bonus, last year's plus 20%, and Clark passes out dead. Just drops dead. So then the hilarity continues. A SWAT team descends on the Griswold house.
I love the phone call. Mrs. Shirley talking to the police about the man who kidnapped her husband.
the man was wearing a blue leisure suit, and the plates were from Kansas. He was a huge, beastly, bulging man.
Bulging man.
Yeah. So the SWAT team descends on the house. Cops are pulling up in cars. They're rappelling off the roof of the house for some reason. Also, I noticed here a weird symmetry between the Shirleys and the Griswolds. The Shirleys are Frank and Helen, and the Griswolds are Clark and Ellen. I thought that was really interesting.
Oh.
So the enemy is but the shadow of the hero.
Huh.
We're the same, you and me.
Dude, get out.
Yep.
Shut it down. We're done. This is the pinnacle of the podcast right now.
Boom.
It's not going to get any better than that. You just won. You won. You won podcasting right there.
Frank Shirley admits everything is his fault. He admits to being a jerk, and he calls off the cops. And then when the cops and his wife find out that he's canceled the bonuses, his wife and the cops turn on them. Literally everyone in this movie has turned their animus from Clark to the boss.
I love the chief. That's cold, mister. If I had a rubber hose, I would beat you.
So, and the Frank is played by Bill Murray's older brother, and man, what an underrated guy he is.
Wait, what? That's
Bill Murray's older brother.
brother.
If you look at him again, the resemblance is unmistakable. Clark's bonus is resurrected. Christmas is resurrected. The pool is resurrected.
All right, so that moves us on to the conclusion of the film, of the journey, the freedom to live, return with the elixir. The hero, having won a precious treasure or reward, now returns to the ordinary world to share the spoils of battle. So once the confrontation has been concluded, little Ruby Sue sees Santa Claus flying across the sky outside. Everybody runs outside, and it's not Santa Claus, Clark says. It's the Christmas star.
That's right, the Christmas star.
And then he talks about what the Christmas star means.
It's the Christmas star. And that's all that matters tonight. Not bonuses or gifts or turkeys or trees. See, kids, it means something different to everybody. Now I know what it means to me.
And then Uncle Lewis says, "That ain't the Christmas star. It's the light on the sewage plant." Which rings a bell with Clark, and suddenly as Lewis tosses the match of the stogie he's lighting over his shoulder into the sewer where Cousin Eddie was dumping his noxious RV tank, an explosion occurs, and the Santa Claus decoration that Clark had on his lawn goes sailing across the sky, and Aunt Bethany, she begins singing the national anthem because she's...
First the Pledge of Allegiance instead of the Lord's Prayer or whatever, and now the Grace, not Lord's Prayer, sorry.
The Griswold family, Mr. and Mrs. Shirley, the SWAT team, everybody's standing out on the lawn, and they all are participating in this, and they all start singing.
Yeah.
And it's this moment of everyone together. They're not singing the right song, but they're all singing a song together. And finally, Clark looks off toward that quote-unquote Christmas star and says,
I did it.
And then roll credits. Clark ends the film despite disaster after disaster.
A perfect ending.
As perfect as we're gonna get.
Dan, after seeing what Clark Griswold goes through in Christmas Vacation, I'm almost glad our family Christmas will be virtual this year.
You're probably glad you have one of those inflammable fake Christmas trees, too.
Darn thing looks like it was made out of green pipe cleaners.
Speaking of green pipe cleaners, if you're in the mood for more Christmas Heroes' Journeys, go to heroesjourneypodcast.com and listen to our episodes about A Christmas Story and other holiday episodes, including The Nightmare Before Christmas and the ultimate Christmas movie, Die Hard.
And while you're there, click on our social links. You can be friends with us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Parler.
We have a Parler account?
No, not Parler, Jeff. It's humor. Go with it.
Speaking of humor, Dan, what do you want for Christmas?
Jeff, what I really want is a dozen new 5-star reviews on iTunes. What about you?
Live cat wrapped in a box.
That's not a cat.
I was being Snots, the drooly dog from the movie. That's even better. I want a squirrel. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation is copyright 1989, Warner Brothers, Inc.
The John Hughes short story on which it was based, Christmas 59, was published in the December 1980 issue of National Lampoon magazine.
Dan, Merry Christmas.
Same to you, Jeff. In fact, Happy Holidays and Merry Christmas to all.
And to all,
journey on.